There were only different forms of Christianity, and these different forms of Christianity were competing for loyal believers. In many places, particularly Egypt, in eastern Syria, see, these are the centers of Jewish Christianity, you see. It is likely that what later churchmen called Jewish Christianity was the initial form of Christianity. The concept of orthodoxy only began to emerge in the struggle between different viewpoints. The party that won claimed the title Orthodox for itself. Or to put it in other words, orthodoxy is merely the most successful heresy. Well, this should cause us to pause. You got to remember, the Greek word heresy comes from the Greek heresis. This carries the root meaning of an opinion or a party line. So in the strict sense of the word, all of the early Christian communities had their own heresy, their own opinion about who Jesus was. It was only many years later at the Council of Nicaea in 325, you see, that by a majority vote it was permanently decided that would forever be acceptable heresy, which then by definition had become orthodoxy. Wow. Walter Bauer, in his Greek-English lexicon, wrote the seminal volume on this idea, Orthodoxy and Heresy in Earliest Christianity, in 1934. Now, this was a groundbreaking work that it was ever increasing in its influence on New Testament scholarship. He powerfully demonstrated that it's difficult to maintain there ever was any pristine unified doctrine in the early church. There were only many competing heresies. British scholar Michael Goulder, one of today's strongest supporters of the Tübingen school, he provides an analysis of the situation that is real interesting. When in church life there is an irreconcilable difference, not just a minor argument here we're talking, no, he is saying when there is an irreconcilable difference over important doctrine, there are winners and losers. The winning party becomes the church, and its opinion becomes orthodoxy. The losing party is driven out of the church, and it becomes a sect, a heresy, a hiss and a byword, so to speak. In the early Christian church, the Petrines won at Antioch. This is Galatians 2:11 through 14. But Paul played his cards carefully, and he did not split away from the church. In the 2nd century, the Pauline faction of Christianity won, and the Aramaic, that is, the original Jewish Christian churches, split away. Hence, they became the heretical sects called the Ebionites and the Nazarenes. The Ebionites, in fact, claimed that they were the direct descendants of the Jerusalem church. So the real question is, who is the original true church? You see the problem we're encountering here? The reason it's such a serious problem is because there are Christians today who are saying, no, based on your belief, based on your understanding of who you think Jesus is, you're heretical. You Mormons aren't even Christian. But this has been going on from day one, and what's really ironic is that it depends which point of view you take. From the original Ebionite Jewish Christian church of Jesus Christ and his successor James, his brother, and Boots demonstrates that the early Christian fathers, Hegesippus, Jerome, Eusebius, many of the early church fathers actually showed it was a family dynasty succession with cousins and blood relatives succeeding Jesus. These were eventually stamped out by the up-and-coming Orthodoxy when Christianity became the official state religion from the pagan Roman Emperor Constantine. They won, and that became Orthodoxy, hence truth. But there's a bad news cloud on this horizon. Orthodoxy does not mean a synonym for truth. Orthodoxy is simply the most powerful heresy. If we all wanted to be Orthodox, we would be Jews, not Christians. Here's the problem. There aren't different Jesuses. There are different interpretations of Jesus. This doesn't necessarily determine what one's particular religion is. It just determines how much light and knowledge one has about Jesus. Now, another, I have to get to this real quick. I wanted to, Daniel C. Peterson and Stephen D. Ricks wrote a book, Offenders for a Word, How Anti-Mormons Play Word Games to Attack the Latter-day Saints. And boy, do they. This is a very powerful little book. They have published this twice. It's gone through a second edition. I still just have the first one. It's from Aspen Books. This first edition is 1992. But the idea that the Christians of today claim that Mormons have a different Jesus, this is quite offensive, actually. It's the idea behind it is to create division, is to make an enemy where no enemy actually is or belongs from a Christian viewpoint. Christians are not supposed to be making enemies, although it seems like ever since Christ was crucified, Christians have always made enemies, and they're usually from within their own movement as the heretics. Oh no, you say Jesus can't be fully God, instead he's a mix of human and man, you're damned, anathemize them and kick them out. And Constantine did banish. Boy, he banished Arius. At one time he repented and brought Arius back and banished Athanasius. There was just no uniform type of thinking. It was all politics. There was absolutely no revelation involved whatsoever. You can get that by reading the history. Well, for people to say that the Mormon Jesus is a different Jesus, Dan Peterson and Stephen D. Ricks has conveniently tabulated on page 58 of their wonderful little book, Offenders for a Word, several different categories, 20 elements of personal identification of the Jesus of the Bible and the Mormon Jesus. The birthplace of the Mormon Jesus is Bethlehem, same with the Bible. The ethnicity of the Mormon Jesus is Jewish, same with the Bible. Was he of David's line? Yes, in both. Was his stepfather's name Joseph? Yes to the Mormon Jesus and yes to the Jesus of the Bible. His mother's name was Mary. His time period was the early 1st century. His occupation was a carpenter-preacher. Did he teach in the temple? Of course. Did he sojourn in Egypt? Yes. Was he baptized by John the Baptist? Yes. Did he walk on the water? Yes. Did he give parables as one of his forms of teaching? Yes, he did. Did he hold a public office? No. The manner of his death was by crucifixion. The time of his death was under Pontius Pilate. The sign of the death was the earthquake. Was he resurrected? Yes. Was he ascended to heaven? Yes. Well, anybody can see that the Latter-day Saints worship the same Jesus as do other Christians. To make his quotation more damning, the Reverend Smith says the word different